and little NASCAR during the
this
season.
week too.
The lawsuit.
Big news. We touch on that just real quick. Michael Jordan is a little, he played in the NBA at one time. If you've ever heard of the fella, he's not just him and Joe Gibbs did not make their original marks in NASCAR. So Chip, they settled it, right?
There's a settlement, and apparently a big win for the NASCAR teams. Apparently the charters that Jordan and Hamlin's teams have been fighting. So basically, they raced all last year unchartered, and I believe from previous conversations we've had, those charters that there's a kind of a fixed payment that they're taking care of that any team that has a charter receives. Well, Hamlin and Jordan's teams did not have that this year, and they basically raced unchartered. But and during this whole lawsuit, and the big portion, I think the big win of the settlement was that NASCAR, the France family, conceded that the charters will be permanent for the race teams. So I think that's a big win. You had this whole really time like this, you miss Terry's perspective on it, but you have. We talked about the heritage teams. You think like RCR, Hendrick, and so forth. Richard Childress this time last year was saying, and most of the teams would agree that the deal that the NASCAR ownership put on the table for the teams, there had been negotiations back and forth, but at this point last year it was like take it or leave it. Like if you don't want it, you're gonna be out. You're not getting the charter. And Richard Childress is like, I don't have it. I'm trying to not only think about what my future, my business. I'm trying to think about the employees I'm trying to support and trying to pay, and so he says I didn't think I had the wherewithal to try to stand up to NASCAR. NASCAR picked one of the few people in this world you don't want to try to pick a fight with, and has the resources to pick a fight with you in arguably the greatest athlete of the 20th century, Michael Jordan, and he was willing to, and Hamlin teamed up with him, and they took him to court, and I think. I don't know. We've not heard the details of any damages. There was one economist who said that the damages that 23 Racing and Hamlin's team, it could be anywhere upwards of $300 million worth of damages. Now, obviously with a settlement, I doubt that they had to do that NASCAR even touched that amount to pay to the teams. The big win for them that has come out is that the charters are going to be permanent. So
there was no trial. It was just they went to court and they reached a settlement.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, Jordan testified, and a few of them did. A few of them were doing their best to avoid testimonies. They didn't want to put real books on the out there. That's what they were kind of arguing about. Is Hamlin's like, we know you guys are making more money than you're claiming.
Yeah.
And then civil court is a little different. You don't have the right to remain silent. Silence is an admission of guilt if you do not answer the questions. So, when you take them to civil court, it's a little different than taking them to criminal court. So a lot of people just go ahead and pay up because they don't want to say anything.
As I'm just reading some of as the final details of the agreement were still being revealed. This is an article on ESPN, but as the final details of the agreement were still being revealed into late afternoon, there was no doubt that the victory belonged to the teams over the sanctioning body, because we already knew that their ultimate goal had been achieved. In the end, this was about their fight for NASCAR to make team charters as close as stock car racing gets to stick and ball franchises permanent, or as their attorney described it, evergreen, as opposed to a contract-to-contract model renewed in conjunction with NASCAR's massive media rights deal. So it kind of basically gives the teams a permanent piece of the pie, I think.
So every sport is different, and, depending on whether you're the athlete or the owners of that sport, you want the money or revenue to go a certain way. Baseball, obviously, is very different than so many other sports. They also have to, provide for their minor leagues as well, so that the other sports might not have. NASCAR is, in racing, you go to anything below NASCAR, you're not looking at, the big, you're not looking at teams that out in the coming up through the dirt tracks and stuff like that. That's what I'm saying. It's a different model, and then at the end of the day, you have a family owning the sport. So you have basically Dana White. So like if you want to go, the MMA, and then there are teams that buy franchises, and then they own the fighters. and so that's not so NASCAR is not the same model as other sports. And then and then you have the folks arguing about the playoffs and where to go with that. So it's a weird model, and I was going to ask Tom, as far as you have an owner it's basically what if Jerry Jones or maybe owned the sport, the whole sport. Is how do they go back and forth with that?
Or
I got to work.
or Roger Goodell or Rob Manfred basically determining which teams get to stay as franchises in the future. So it's the long and short of it is, again, as this article that I was reading from ESPN that was written by Ryan McGee talks about, this was a victory for the teams. And again, it surprises me, and Tom, this goes to something you've alluded to in sports, and even I would go in life in general, that for years, and you talk about successful race teams, you talk about teams like again, Richard Childress, Rick Hendrick, Joe Gibbs Racing. These are the established people who've been around NASCAR. These are the establishment teams and owners in race cars that we have grown up to be familiar with and known. I mean, Richard Childress. Anybody knows Richard Childress? You think Dale Earnhardt, obviously. Rick Hendrick, you think of Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, so forth and so on. But as successful as these guys are, it goes to the point, if you don't have the money, even you're talking about their money versus the France family, and these guys, these pillars of this sport, these faces of the sport, did not think they had the wherewithal and the resources to go against the France family. Kind of, to me, shows just how much the France family actually had. And it took someone of Jordan's standing and, I would say, confidence, for lack of a better term, to say no.
And I think his, just who he is,
right?
That's going to have a certain amount of gravitas. Sorry, Pasco.
Yeah.
All right, but
be careful.
Certain gravitas that he has. But what it sounds like the situation is kind of like the New York Yankees in baseball. This one team's got all this money; he doesn't really have to play by all the rules. And
well, that's what I was about to say. So, Tom, here's Jordan's one of his quotes in a recent.
We're gonna have to update that comparison.
Here's one of Jordan's quotes in a recent negotiation for a driver salary. I don't know the amount of money, and I do know Denny Hamlin had been making $11 million for 23, but Jordan said, "I've lost that in a casino. Let's do it." So when you're in a negotiation with someone like that, it's kind of hard to win that negotiation. And, the France is running up against someone that, has I don't care money.
Yeah, that's it. And I don't know.
Like, you can spin your cars around this track all you want. I sell more shoes than you guys make on shoes.
I don't know if you heard. I know you were helping Brent. I don't know. So, like, and it's not like he was going against. Again, we're talking about, and repeat. Sorry for the folks who are listening. Like Richard Childress, Rick Hendrick, Joe Gibbs. These aren't guys that don't have money.
Yeah.
But the France family, it's obviously a different level of money. But then you're going against Jordan, and that changes the whole equation.
It also helps that he's not as ingrained in the sport as maybe Hendricks is, or the other ones that might not want to, like some type of fires with certain type of lawsuits. Like I said, none of them want discovery at all. Yeah. So they're all avoiding any of that and everything they can in any. So it's just a weird situation, but I'm glad they figured out whatever they did. Good for. It seems like everything I'm reading is Jordan did a decent job on this.